You've been playing a character for so long, you forgot it was a performance. The careful words, the managed reactions, the version of yourself that keeps things smooth. It worked. It kept you safe. But somewhere along the way, you stopped recognizing the person looking back. Here's what that feels like. You're successful, functional, people would call you put together. But inside, there's this quiet dissonance. You say yes when you mean no, you laugh at jokes that aren't funny, you perform interest in conversations that drain you, not because you're fake, because you learned a long time ago that survival had conditions. Maybe you learned that anger was dangerous, so you became agreeable. Maybe you learned that needs were burdens, so you became self-sufficient. Maybe you learned that visibility invited criticism, so you became invisible. These weren't conscious choices, they were adaptations. Your nervous system made a deal. Sacrifice authenticity, gain safety. And for years, maybe decades, that deal worked. But here's what no one tells you about survival strategies. They have an expiration date. The personality you built wasn't designed for thriving, it was designed for enduring. And the context that required it, it's gone. You're not broken, you're not defective, you're running outdated software on new hardware. The psychologist Carl Rogers called this the gap between the real self and the ideal self. But there's a third self most people miss, the adapted self, the version you became to meet the demands of your environment. And that self is now in conflict with who you actually are. Let's talk about what's happening in your brain. When you were young, your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for complex decision-making, wasn't fully developed, but your amygdala, the fear center, was fully online. So when you encountered emotional threat, rejection, criticism, abandonment, your brain didn't analyze, it adapted. It created what psychologists call schemas, mental templates for how to behave. If I'm quiet, I'm safe. If I achieve, I'm worthy. If I don't need anything, I won't be disappointed. These schemas became automatic, unconscious, wired into your default mode network. And they worked. They got you through. But now, every time you operate from that adapted self, your brain sends a signal. Something's wrong. Not because you're doing something bad, but because there's a mismatch between your behavior and your authentic wiring. Psychologists call this cognitive dissonance. Your body calls it exhaustion. So how do you close the gap? Not by trying harder, not by positive thinking, by doing something quieter, more precise. Here are 5 principles rooted in psychology. 1. Name the adaptation. You can't change what you can't see. Start by identifying one pattern you run on autopilot. Not all of them, just one. Ask yourself, what did this behavior protect me from? Maybe people-pleasing protected you from anger. Maybe overworking protected you from feelings of inadequacy. This isn't about blame, it's about clarity. Neuroscience shows that simply labeling an emotional pattern reduces amygdala activation. Naming it takes the edge off. 2. Separate past context from present reality. Your brain doesn't automatically know the danger is gone. It's still scanning for the threats that shaped you. So you need to actively update the operating system. When you notice the adaptation running, pause. Ask, is this response relevant to right now, or am I reacting to a memory? This is called temporal distancing in cognitive behavioral therapy. It creates space between stimulus and response, and in that space, choice becomes possible. 3. Experiment with micro-authenticity. You don't have to burn down your whole life. You just have to tell the truth in one small moment. Say no to one thing you'd normally agree to. Share one real feeling instead of managing the room. Let someone see you struggle instead of performing competence. What you're doing is retraining your nervous system. You're teaching it, I can be real and still be safe. Each micro-experiment builds what psychologists call self-concordance, alignment between your actions and your true values. 4. Tolerate the discomfort of being seen. Here's the hard part. When you stop performing, people notice. Some will be confused, some will resist, some will prefer the old version. That's not a sign you're doing it wrong, it's a sign you're doing it right. Your brain will scream, danger, go back, perform. Let it scream. This is what therapists call extinction learning. You're teaching your amygdala that the thing it fears, being your real self, doesn't actually lead to catastrophe. It just leads to truth. And truth, even when it's uncomfortable, is lighter than pretending. 5. Rebuild from essence, not from others' expectations. The final step isn't about adding more, it's about subtraction. Ask yourself, if no one was watching, how would I spend my time? What would I care about? How would I speak? These answers won't come quickly. You've spent years listening to external voices. But beneath the adapted self, there's a quiet signal. Psychologists call it intrinsic motivation. It's what you do because it feels true, not because it earns approval. Start following that signal, even in small ways. Here's the simple model to remember. You are not one self, you are 3. The real self, who you are beneath conditioning, the adapted self, who you became to survive, and the integrated self, who you're becoming as you close the gap. The goal isn't to destroy the adapted self. It served you. It kept you alive. The goal is to stop letting it run the show. Because the life you're living now doesn't require a performance. It requires presence. You've been carrying a version of yourself that was never meant to be permanent. It was a shield, a strategy, a shape you took through a narrow door. But you're not in that room anymore. And the door ahead, it's wide enough for all of you. You don't have to announce it. You don't have to explain it. You just have to stop pretending. One moment at a time. One true word at a time. The personality you built to survive is no longer you. And that's not a loss. It's a homecoming.